to write UPSC with history optional, right? I think so you have planned the things properly. Now you guys are willing to write the answers. Has anyone written the has anyone written mains before? किसी ने लिखा है इससे पहले mains? No one has written, right? Okay, so you all have started preparing for this optional paper. Okay, you think so at least, right? Okay, fine. So when are you planning to write UPSC? Next year? Next year. You all are planning to write the UPSC next year. Have you covered the content by your own? How many of you are from history background? Okay, there are many people from history background. That's nice. Okay, so you all have done your graduation. How many of you have done masters also? Okay, but two fellows in there, you have done masters also. So you people are knowing much history, right? Your masters is from DU, yeah, and yours is Rajasthan University. Okay, and rest of the people, they have just done the graduation. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So I hope you know the basic objective of this session. So basically here we're going to focus more on answer writing, right? That's the basic objective. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to discuss with the for something for the content. Yes, I'll discuss something about the content first, right? And then we'll come to the answer writing. Like I don't know that how much you have followed this UPSC pattern of marks basically that's people are scoring in history, because there are some rumors also for this subject that people are not scoring very good. And what is the what is good score? What is the definition of good score as per you? What do you find that what score should be or should be considered as good score? Sorry, 300. 300. Okay. So this is the score which is considered to be good, right? And why do you find that the score is good? Why not 350? टारगेट बड़ा होना चाहिए यार, बड़ा सोचो लाइफ में, छोटा सोच के क्या फायदा है? Okay, fine. No, you people are giving a practical target. Yes, do you have any suggestion? I was
just saying, if two people are running and blindly chasing, then I don't have to run faster than the person.
Okay, that's also a good logic. Okay, and in fact, in any competitive examination, I think that is that approach should be followed, right? So yes, to some extent, you people are right. That 300, I won't say it's a very good score, but it's a decent score, right? And why it is considered to be decent? Because there's a very simple logic. Just by scoring this much, you can clear this UPSC examination, that too with good rank, right? Because if somehow you are scoring, 280 plus, so you are securing your seat, right? And if you are scoring somewhere around 300 or more than 300, so of course your chances are very fair, right? And in fact, optional has started playing very important role these days in UPSC. And in fact, I'll say there are three papers which are playing very important role in your selection and deciding your rank. This is the first is of course optional. The second one is essay, right? Because there's a huge difference in marks in essay also. And the third, I'll say ethics, because that paper is also playing very important role, because some they are not able to score good, whereas some will find they have been scoring very good in ethics paper, right? So I think here we need to focus on the optional paper, and that is why we'll just talk about the optional paper. So now, as far as the marks or the pattern of marks are concerned in optional, or specifically in history optional, so you must have seen the score is varying a lot. There is some good differences in the marks that you'll find. That good number of people, they are only scoring 200, and the most striking thing that I have noticed, that these people are never able to improve also their marks, right? So if they have scored 200 and they think okay, next year I'll just do more hard work, and then then they have been reaching on 210, 220, and if you're scoring this much, of course you won't be able to clear this examination. So sorry. So the basic objective of this class is how to improve your marks, right? So that's the basic objective, right? So whenever it comes to marks, as I am clearly telling you that the basic objective is 300, but let me tell you very frankly that it is very much possible to score even more than 300. The question is that how do you prepare this optional paper? The I have noticed, because as I have been a student of history, right, for last 20 years, and I have been teaching for last 6-7 years, right. So what I have noticed that people never try to understand the nature of the subject, and they think, okay, fine, they have choose history as an optional paper, and they start reading something, and then finally they are writing, and this nature cannot be seen among the students where they are trying to understand the nature of subject, because ultimately, until and unless you understand the nature of subject, you won't be able to score good, right. So as I was telling you that it's very much possible to score more than 300, and many of my students have scored more than 300. Last year there was a fellow, Iswar Kandu, he scored 316 or 17, and and in fact he was not coming from this background, he was not from history background, and last year only, when before that attempt he appeared and he scored 216, and just in the next year he managed to score more than 316, and in fact I have seen good number of people, they are still scoring around 320, 326. Last year also someone has scored 326, I guess. So 320, 330 is also possible target, but the thing is that we cannot plan 330, right. There are several factors which are playing very important role once you are scoring 330 or 320, like, so we cannot talk about something which is happening because of because of some certain factors. We can plan something which can be achieved, and we have planned something and then we are trying to fulfill it. So this is the target that can be achieved as per your plan, right. So the basic objective of this session is how to plan 300. That's the idea that we are going to discuss here, right. Now as far as this history optional is concerned, or that is true for most of the optional, right, but as far as this optional is concerned, right, there are three ideas that we need to discuss, right. So for writing answers, there's first thing which is very much important, that is content. Isn't that true, right? Of course you require content, right. After content, the another thing which I find mostly missing among the students, that is concept of the subject. And the third, that is also very important, that is called as presentation part, right. So basically we need to focus in these three areas, right. And of course there are two things which are very as far as concept is there and presentation is there, that is slightly vague, that how to present your answers, right. As far as content is there, right, so there you have certain surety, okay, these are the things that you are supposed to read. So let us begin the discussion with the content only, right. So suppose you have choose history optional, and many of you have done your graduation also with this subject. In that case you must be knowing, okay, this is ancient India, medieval India, modern and world. These are the four sections in world, 4 sections in history optional, and now you must be knowing a name of certain books also. Okay, these are the books that we are supposed to read. But do you really think that is there any limit of this history? And this is one of the most popular rumors, right, for history, that it is limitless. There is no limit of history. To what extent you find this is true, that history is not having any limit? The syllabus is bigger, much bigger as compared to the other optional papers. But do you really think that the syllabus is much bigger, or there is some problem because of what you are having such kind of perception for the subject? How do you decide the length and breadth of syllabus? Just by seeing the papers number, how many pages have been given in UPSC for the syllabus? If you are seeing that with respect to that, well, of course find it quite lengthy. But have you even compared the history optional syllabus with the other optional syllabus? You'll find that most of the syllabus are given in a very concise manner. Okay? Whether the history optional syllabus has been given in a very decoded manner. Everything has been written. Everything. Even the name of the sources that you need to consult, right, that is also written. If you are reading the medieval period, they have given the name of few sources. If you are reading ancient, if you are studying the ancient period, they have given the name of important sources. Arthashastra has also been given. So okay, we can assume you can assume that in this way also, if Mauryan Empire has been given, so Arthashastra is naturally becoming part of that. That can be also considered. But they have been writing everything, and because of what it seems quite lengthy. But at the same time, actually the way they have given the syllabus, because there was a period when history optional used to be very popular subject, and in fact there were very limited subjects initially, and half of the people used to appear in mains examination with this history optional only, right. And that is why history was the first paper which was conducted in UPSC. I don't know, you people are very new, right, you must not be knowing about these patterns. Initially when the days were fixed, different days were fixed for the optional paper, during those years history was the first paper which was conducted, and many people avoided taking history because of this reason only, because history was the first, after general studies the history was the first paper they had to write, and immediately after the general studies they needed to write this paper. So that is why what happened. Yeah. That is why what happened, they avoided taking history as an optional paper. But it was decided as per the number those who have been appearing in the mains examination. So as history was the most, preferred subject by the, people or the aspirants, and that's the reason it happened to history. So basically history, as it was a very popular subject among the UPSC aspirants, and that's the reason that they have given the syllabus in this way. And there are very minor changes that could be, noticed over the period after the beginning of Indian Civil Services or this examination. Will find very minor changes have taken place so far, right? So this is one important question, that once it is coming to limit of the subject, that's also very important. And let me tell you one thing very frankly, if you think that everything that has been given in syllabus that you need to prepare, so I think you are in a misconception. ठीक है, ये सही नहीं है. आपको लगता है हर वो कुछ जो दिया हुआ है वो आपको पढ़ना है. So I think it's a misconception. You don't need to read everything, right? So now the question is that what to read. That's very important. And the second important question, what sources must be used to cover all these kind of things, right? If you're not aware of the proper sources, right, in that case, any optional paper, irrespective of the optional paper, it's bit problematic for you to prepare the subject. And that is where the sources, there should be very good clarity of the sources. But, there are two things I'd like to say. There are some people, those who are coming, after studying history, like there was many people, those who have been sitting here, they have done their graduation. Either you have done graduation, I'm very sorry to say you, but either you have done your graduation from good colleges or you have done your graduation from some average colleges. I won't say bad colleges, average colleges, right? So in average colleges, average college, what is happening? You are not reading much, right? You have been just recommended one simple text and this is what you have been reading, you have been reading, and that's of course not sufficient. But what is happening in good colleges? दूर के ढोल सुहावने होते हैं, सुना है ना ये, ठीक है? Because I have been part of this college, university teaching also. I myself teaching in Delhi University, and that is why I know that what is happening actually, right? So ultimately the focus is very much, the focus has been given very much to 4 questions, right? That at the, at the end in the examination, we are supposed to write the 4 questions, and that's one problem that is there, right? And I mean, irrespective of the university, that's one pattern which is very commonly being followed, and that's the reason that ultimately when it comes to the question of content, right, so people are not having very good content, right? So if you think that you have done your graduation, you have done your masters in the subjects, and then you are having very fair idea of the subject, that is not true. So I think the nature or the demand in UPSC is slightly different. So just try to cover your content as per the demand of the subject or as per the demand of the UPSC, right? Now the question is that if it comes to limit, if you need to fix the limit of the content, how you are going to do it, right? So there are 2 things I would like to say here, right? If we need to fix the limit of the subject, right, there are 2 things that you need to do, right? First thing, you just see the syllabus in front of you, right? You keep the syllabus always in front of you. That's very important. And wherever you have the reading table, wherever you're having this reading table or study table, right, you just keep the syllabus always in front of you. That's the first thing which is very important. And the second thing, the biggest support is the question papers of the last few years, right? So here also you have to be very cautious that what question paper you should you should refer. So basically you just see the question paper from 2012 onwards. Okay, 2012 onward question papers that you also need to see, because these are 2 things which are helping you to limit your content. And in fact, most of them, very frankly, I'm telling you, most of the aspirants are not doing this, right? And that is why what I do, I always give you the collection of papers or the questions, right, as per the subject, right, as per the subject after the once I'm done, right? So once you start preparing, you just collect the questions of at least 2012 onwards, and always categorize the questions as per the chapters or as per the as per the topics, right? So that thing which is very important and that you need to do. So that first thing that you need to do this, right, and do it immediately if you haven't done it, right? So as far as content is there, so as I'm suggesting you that this is how you can fix the content, this is how you can limit the content, and now you can make your preferences. How come? Because okay, these are the chapters which are very important, from where the regularly questions were being asked, right? There are few areas which have been always ignored, like I'm just giving you a few examples, like megalithic period, right? That has been given in your syllabus, but questions are not being asked from megalithic. So you just need to have a it's just understanding of the megalithic period. You don't need to mug up facts and many figures and all, because it's not required, because they are not asking the questions in that in the same manner. Like same can be discussed for the Chalcolithic also. This is one area which is not which is not highlighted a lot by UPSC. And apart from this, the most importantly, the Stone Age. Right, though it's very important, because I hope at least those who have studied history, you know the significance of Stone Age, because most of the important transformations happen now. And in fact, for me, the Neolithic period was the most revolutionary period, because I think we are sitting here preparing for UPSC and I'm teaching for UPSC just because of that reason, because in Neolithic somehow they came up with the concept of society, and that society is over the period getting more and more complex, and that is how we have reached to that this particular stage. So Neolithic is very important, but if we'll think in terms of UPSC, in that case you'll find they have very limited topics from where they can frame the questions, right? If you have been asked to frame questions from the Neolithic, don't you think that you might have problem while framing the questions from the Neolithic period? So I think this idea should be very clear in your mind, and if you do not have the ideas very clear in your mind about the nature of the questions being asked, about the areas which have been ignored by UPSC, about the areas which have been preferred by UPSC, I think it's a bit tough to cover the syllabus, because this is how you can minimize the syllabus, and that's very important, right? So as far as content is there, so this is how you can at least select, right, the preferred topics or some important topics that must be covered by you, and that's one important thing that you must note down, right? Now the second question, okay fine, you have fixed, okay, these are the content or these are the topics that you need to cover. Now the second aspect is coming from where to cover. Right, you must be knowing about sources, right? And there were several people talking you about, or they have been suggesting you various sources. There are so many toppers, they have their videos in the YouTube, and they have been suggesting they have been suggesting you in a way. I covered A.L. Bossam also, Upinder Singh also, I have covered this also, right? They have covered many books. Okay, they have covered many books. Do you really find it practical that you have been covering many books, right, for UPSC? Let me tell you one thing, again, like UPSC is never the examination of content. If you think that just by covering greater amount of content you are able to score good, that's a misconception again, right? Because I think history is a subject that you have devoted wholly of your life, even though you won't be able to catch the whole content, because I think about the pattern, because we people, I have done my MPhil and masters and MPhil pursuing my PhD, right? And still I feel ki if I'll get some time, so I'll study more, I can know more about history, because people are having ample amount of knowledge in their specified areas, right? So knowledge is not the criteria of the selection, that you always fix in mind, right? So now how to choose the content, that's also very important, and here you have to be very selective while choosing the content. You need to have very balanced kind of balanced kind of content, but at the same time it should not be very vast, it should not be in good number of pages, right? So you just need how to minimize, you need to learn how to minimize this content, right? So now as far as this content is concerned, so for ancient, like most of the people must be suggesting you what book? उपेंद्र सिंह, ठीक है, अभी गीता बन चुकी है इनसे इनके लिए, ठीक है. But you just honestly tell me one thing, if you have seen the book of Upinder Singh, I am telling you very frankly, without doing Upinder Singh you can't clear UPSC, because you can't score good, right? I won't say you can't clear UPSC, but you can't score good in at least in paper 1, right? The question is that, do you find that whole book of Upinder Singh is relevant for your examination? Whenever I suggested this book to someone, right, whenever I suggested this book to someone, they always reply me in a way, this is very bulky book, how to cover it? And this is the biggest problem with the aspirants also, because I find that people never try to inquire and they never try to analyze the nature of the questions, and they try to find the relevant topics in the in the book of Upinder Singh. It is not only about Upinder Singh, either whatever the books that you have been reading, right, you need to select certain areas which are important to you, and that is why when it comes to Upinder Singh, right, or if it comes to any other book, you need to be very selective. And I think this practice or this exercise is helping you to select what are the relevant pages in Upinder Singh, and very frankly only 1/3 of the book is relevant to you, rest of the book is highly irrelevant to you. Whereas if you'll see the book, that book has been developed for the graduation students or the undergraduate students, right, and that book is highlighting a lot over sources. Each and every source has been highlighted, like they have suppose there is an excavation in Daimabad, right, so she is giving all these details of Daimabad, ki how many layers were there, and then the sub layers have also been discussed. So I think while reading Upinder Singh, just ask one question to yourself only, that is it what you are going to write in the examination? Are you going to, include all these details in your answer? Of course not. It's not required at all, right? So why to read that? So this is what I'm telling you, that be very specified while reading the subject, reading the books, right? Because if you can't do this, in that case, history would be limitless to you, right? So as per this, right, decide the pages which are important to you. Now, as far as ancient India is concerned, so I'll suggest you basically 2 books which are very important. Apart from NCERTs, you all must be reading the old NCERTs. But apart from the old NCERTs, there's a book called as D.N. Jha, right? Ancient India. That's a very concise book. I think hardly 100 pages are there, but that book is very important. Why? Because that book is developing a concept of ancient India, right? And if you'll read Upinder Singh, at the end you won't be able to summarize ancient India. Suppose I'm asking that you just summarize ancient India in 500 words, I think you won't be able to do it, because if you have read only Upinder Singh, so you have understood the things in fractions. Okay, this is the modern period, these are the important things in modern period, but if I'll ask you that continuity which is happening in ancient India, that you won't be able to tell me. And that is why before reading anything, I think for every topic, either you are reading the ancient India or medieval or modern or world, every time you'll find there's a kind of continuity, right? And if you do not understand, because if you have compared the paper or compared the paper 1 and paper 2, you'll find that the questions from paper 1 are more or less based on concepts. They have been more emphasizing on the concepts, and in paper 2 the paper used to be slightly factual as compared to paper 1, right? And that is why while reading paper 1, I think one idea that should be there always, the concept, right? So always first try to develop the content and the concept, right? And these concepts must be filled with certain amount of facts, and there Upinder Singh can help you. Got my point? So this is how you need to cover. So at least these 2 books that I suggested you, D.N. Jha, and the second book is Upinder Singh, right? But as I told you that it is not necessary that you have been reading the whole Upinder Singh. You have to be selective in that, right? Coming to the next section, that is medieval India. I think for medieval India, what is the most popular book? Satish Chandra. But do you really think that every question is that has been asked in UPSC? I won't say that every question is coming from Satish Chandra, but yes, Satish Chandra is is supposed to be a very good book, because again I'll say the way D.N. Jha is trying to make you understand about about ancient India, in the similar fashion Satish Chandra is also trying to make you understand about the medieval India. But the problem with the book is more political, right? That fellow is more interested in the developments, the political developments which were happening, and in fact so much micro details have been given in this book. Like if someone is when Akbar is trying to conquer South India, or Alauddin Khalji is trying to conquer South India, so every minute details or minor detail has been given there. Ye isse ladta hai, ye isko bhejta hai, wahan se ye ruler aata hai. Now again ask the same question to yourself, right? Is it necessary to write in the examination? Of course not, right? So in fact you need to identify what are the important areas, and in fact on many of my videos I must have discussed about the nature of the subject, and I told you that history can be divided, or the society can be divided into 4 aspects: the political aspects, the social, economic and religious aspect, or we can say cultural aspect. And mind you, the shift, there is a shift in UPSC, and they have been slightly deviating from the political history towards the social, economic and the cultural history, right? So when you are reading Satish Chandra, I think you should have some rough idea of the political development. At least you should know that yes, Alauddin Khalji was trying to conquer South India. What kind of approaches he had, like was he really willing to control South India directly, or he was only wanted to bring them in the tributary state? This is what you need to know. It doesn't mean that you have been noting down every detail, and in fact this is also one of the problems that I have noticed with many students, that while reading they have been marking always the factual sort of things, facts, because we always think that facts are the most important thing in history, and for me this is the worst thing in history, right? And in fact just for writing facts you are not getting marks in the optional paper, and that is why even if you have this idea in your mind that I'll be writing more facts, and in fact these are the people, those who are scoring in first attempt 200, in the next one they are reaching to 210, right? They won't be able to reach on 280 and 290. Why? Because for them history is something altogether different, and that is why these people are never able to score good. And I think here the concept is playing very important role. So you need to be very particular about the facts. You just need to collect this much fact which is sufficient to substantiate your answer. Suppose if you are giving any argument, so that argument must be supported by one fact, because examples are required. right? So examples you need to write, but not in form of mini examples. Examples are not history. That idea is important, and that idea must be substantiated with the with certain amount of facts, maybe one or two. That's more than sufficient, or that's enough, right? So this is how you need to segregate certain areas of Satish Chandra, right? But as I told you that Satish Chandra is actually incapable of answering every question, or we can say every question is not being asked from Satish Chandra. So this part must be supplemented by some other things also, right? Like here you can there are some other basic books that can be that can be referred here. Like I hope you have heard about the book of J.L. Mehta, right? So there are 3 volumes of J.L. Mehta. You just consult the third one, right? There is a third volume of J.L. Mehta which is dealing with the cultural part of history, right? And there you'll find some good articles on Babarnama, and then the Sufi movement, the Bhakti movement, like the development of education during the medieval period, because these are some areas which are left by Satish Chandra. And so like this is also one thing, like once I recommended that book, it doesn't mean that you have to start from page number 1 and you have to finish the whole book, right? You just identify the areas, like okay, this information you do not have from Satish Chandra, okay, that can be covered from J.L. Mehta. So whenever you are referring any other book or any whenever you are referring other books, right, so you have to be very cautious that okay, the information that you do have, right, so that portion you avoid. Where you are lacking information, that part you cover from the next book, right? Well, apart from this, right, the medieval questions are also getting tricky day by day, and that is when another material that I can suggest, right, that is MA IGNOU material. Don't get much confused, because I am not getting you confused. What I am suggesting you, again the same thing. Like there are several things written in MA IGNOU material that you must be knowing, right? But there are so many things. Like I am just giving you one example. Like whenever it comes to the nature of Sultanate, suppose this is one question. So if the question is about the nature of Sultanate, so if you read Satish Chandra or J.L. Mehta, they have given very very unnecessary details for the nature of state. This kind of powers were being enjoyed by Sultan. This was the bureaucracy. This is how it has been discussed, right? But when it comes to nature of state, so there are certain terms what the examiner is expecting from you, such as it was a patrimonial state, it was a religious state, it was a military state, right? So there are these terms that they have been looking for, right? And if you're not writing these terms, because the keywords are also very important in examination, because in every answer, let me tell you one thing very frankly, if you think that these people are reading your whole answer and then they are okay thinking okay, this fellow should be given 60% or 70%, that's not true, because it's a job for them. And that is why what they are doing, they are just looking for the keywords. Okay, these are the keywords of this answer, and how many keywords are included by you in the answer. And if they find okay, you have included good number of such keywords, in that case, on the basis of that they have been marking. And that is why just be very particular about these keywords. So whenever I am trying to write on the nature of state during the Sultanate period, I think you must focus, or we must focus on those kind of keywords, because ultimately how much detail you have given, how much analytical answer that you have written, that is not going to get you some weightage, right? And that is why keywords are also very important. So this is how you can segregate certain areas from MA IGNOU material also, and that can also help you to study this this part, right? So okay, this much reading, this much is sufficient for medieval India. Moving to the next, that is modern India, right? So for modern India, what you are referring, normally there is a book that has become very popular these days, that is शेखर बंदोपाध्याय, ठीक है? शेखर बंदोपाध्याय बहुत पॉपुलर है। अब जो है मॉडर्न इंडिया के लिए ये गीता, कुरान, रामायण जो भी कह लीजिए वो हो गई है, ठीक है? आप पढ़ते हैं, लेकिन जब आप शेखर बंदोपाध्याय पढ़ते हैं तब एक बड़ा नॉर्मल सा क्वेश्चन मेरे पास आता है कि बड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है। यस, इट इज कॉम्प्लिकेटेड इफ यू हैवंट अंडरस्टूड द हिस्ट्री। इफ यू हैव अंडरस्टूड द हिस्ट्री, इन दैट केस इट इज नॉट कॉम्प्लिकेटेड फॉर यू, बिकॉज शेखर बंदोपाध्याय हैज डेवलप्ड इन अ डिफरेंट मेथड. It is not writing like Bipin Chandra. That book has not been developed like Bipin Chandra, because Bipin Chandra is writing or narrating a story to you. गांधी आते हैं, गांधी डंडा चलाते हैं, अंग्रेज डरने लगते हैं, फिर भाग जाते हैं, ठीक है? अच्छा लगता है सुनने में, ठीक है? अच्छी मतलब गुड वाली फीलिंग आती है उससे कि अच्छा ऐसे ही इंडिया आजाद हो गया. But I think this is a very partial interpretation of modern India. Like modern India has not been explained in only in this way. Rather, there are multiple ways in which modern India has been or can be explained, right? And I think this is what Shekhar Bandyopadhyay has done. So instead of writing his own understanding on modern India, he has basically compiled the various understandings on modern modern India. And that is how the things are quite confusing, because at one point you have been reading something else. On the second paragraph, he is writing the completely opposite idea. And that is how what is happening. It's slightly confusing. But once you have understood the nature of the subject, because again I'll come to that point, the concept. If the concept of history is very clear to you, because this is also one of the biggest misconception with most of the students, those who have been preparing and not coming from history background, that they find that whatever I have read in the book, this is what called as history. That is not history. That is the only perception of that fellow. It doesn't mean it is history, right? And the person who is making the question, the framing the question, the person who is coming for the evaluation, it's not necessary that he is also coming from the same background, and that is why whatever you have written after reading Bipin Chandra, the same thing would be praised by him and would be rewarded by him, right? That is not going to happen. Maybe that person is belonging to a different school, and that is why he may punish you whatever the way you have written your answer. And that is why here that's understanding is playing very important role. And I think this concept can be noticed from the book of, or can be taken from the book of Shekhar Bandyopadhyay. So suppose if you have read the book of NCERT written by Bipin Chandra, and then you have read the book of Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, then I think it is going to work for you. But again, these two books, like the NCERT book and Shekhar Bandyopadhyay's book, is not sufficient for answering all the questions, because there are so many areas which are avoided by Shekhar Bandyopadhyay. Because once you are writing the book in such a complicated manner, in that case, of course, you are having that limitation that you cannot include everything, and that is why there are certain areas which are ignored. And I think here you need to identify some more books to cover these sections. So when it comes to these areas which are omitted by Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, so I think there we can talk about, such as like the Governor Generals and Viceroys. There is no discussion over this, right? If we'll talk about acts, there is no discussion over this, right? So I think for that you can consult some more books, like that book, Grover, right? In Grover you will find some good details on this, right? So you just cover it from there, but it doesn't mean you need to read the whole book of Grover, because otherwise the book of Grover is nothing but kuda. Okay, this is nothing is there. So there are few things, there are few chapters which are important, so you just cover those chapters or those areas from that book, right? And nothing else you are supposed to cover from that book, right? Okay, coming to the next section, right? That is the world history. Now, world history is the most complicated area for you. Though the questions which are being asked in modern India, in world history, these used to be slightly simple, right? They are not asking very complicated questions as such, the way they have been asking in ancient India and specifically modern India. So, as far as the good content is concerned, I don't know, people are consulting different kind of books, but unfortunately, let me tell you one thing very frankly, no Indian, no standard books are being consulted by you as far as this modern world is concerned. I think most of the people are reading this L. Mukherjee. That's a very popular book among the UPSC aspirant. Well, apart from this, there's another book of Jan and Mathur, right? So these are some of the books which are mostly consulted or referred by you. But I think these books are not very standard. There is one book called as of Ranjan Chakravarti. That Ranjan Chakravarti is a good book, right? And that is giving you some good or basic understanding of the subject. And apart from that, I think I won't recommend you to read any specific book, because whenever it comes to good books on world history, so these books are always not of Indian authors. Mostly these are written by the foreign authors, right? So I hope you have heard about Ralph and Burns. How many of you have heard about Ralph and Burns? नहीं सुना है, ठीक है. 4 वॉल्यूम्स इनकी किताबें आती हैं. So that there is a volume C, that is as per your syllabus. So you can refer if you want to read some you want to read something good on world history. In that case, I think that book is good. Apart from that, Eric Hobsbawm, right, David Thompson, these are some standard books, but I'm not recommending these books. I'm just telling you that out of these books, at least one can be consulted by you if you are very serious for world history. If you think that you are able to write 3 questions from world history, in that case you can consult, you can go for this book. Ralph and Burns is also a very standard book. Some of the chapters are missing in this book, but that book also can be consulted. So out of whatever I have suggested, out of these, you can select just one book for world history. And if you are reading one standard text in world history, right, that is going to definitely help you, while writing the answers, because of course the concepts would be, there would be huge difference in the in the concept or in understanding with the person who has only studied the notes of any teacher, right? So that's not going to help you much, right? So this is how you're going to finish the content. And as I told you that these should be the guideline while covering the content, right? Now coming to the second aspect, right, that is concept, right? As far as concept is there, as I told you that this is one of the most problematic area with the people, those who have been writing UPSC, right? Those who have been writing UPSC with this optional paper, right? What is the biggest problem when it comes to, concept? You never try to link one topic with the another topic. Right, that's the biggest problem. If American Revolution is happening, right, so there may be American Revolution, or basically it's not American Revolution, American War of Independence. It must be having certain relationship with the, the British, French Revolution. Popular idea है. पहले कौन सा हुआ था? American Revolution हुआ था या French Revolution हुआ था? तो फिर कैसे होगा यार ऐसा? नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है, ठीक है. बेसिकली अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन एंड फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन ज्यादा डिफरेंस नहीं है दोनों के बीच में, ठीक है, बट इन दोनों के बीच में कनेक्शंस बहुत सारे थे, ठीक है. देयर आर सेवरल कनेक्शंस दैट कुड बी नोटिस. कनेक्शन डजंट मीन ओनली, आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट द फिजिकल कनेक्शन, राइट. आई एम जस्ट सिंपली टॉकिंग अबाउट द आइडियोलॉजिकल कनेक्शन बिटवीन दीज टू, राइट. And apart from that, the way you perceive American Revolution, I do not perceive American Revolution in this way. I think American Revolution was not completed only 1776. Rather, this process went longer, or the process took more time, and I think it was completed with the formation of American Constitution. Right? एक बार American Constitution लिखते हैं और फिर सारे वो ideas आते हैं, and I think that was the completion of American Revolution. And by that time, French Revolution has taken place. Right? So there are several things, and apart from that, we can discuss about the the impact of Britain over, or impact of Europe over American Revolution. So there are several things that can be discussed, right? So what I'm trying to tell you, look, concept is very important when you need to learn the interlinkages of the topics, and most importantly the periods, right? Every period, right? Suppose you have studied IBC, and then you are studying Vedic period, and if you think now from IBC we have jumped into the Vedic period, that's the problem you people are having mostly. And in fact, those who have done your graduation also, let me tell you very frankly, the biggest missing portion, or the biggest drawback that you people are having, that you do not know ancient India as a whole, you do not know the medieval India as a whole, and ultimately I'll say you do not know the whole India as a whole, right? Because we haven't reached to this particular stage directly, rather it was a kind of continuous growth. And I think history, the basic idea for history is this, that you need to learn. Suppose you are talking about caste system, we need to learn how how did this caste system evolve, and what were the changes, or the continuities or the changes which were there in caste system, and how did we, how did it reach to this condition. So for everything there is a past and there is a continuous growth, and I think this is one of the missing area with you. So whenever you are learning history, always apply this idea that ultimately we are trying to learn about the society, and in fact there are certain, of course they are giving back something, they are giving something to society, in return they have been taking something from society, and as a mixture, or as a, because of all these amalgamations or the intermixing, a new system is emerging. So I think always try to understand history in this way. Now when it comes to paper 1 and paper 2, so I think the concepts can be dealt in a different manner, right? So once you are dealing with paper 1, suppose let us talk about paper 1. So in paper 1, for how many years, for how you have been reading, or you have been studying the history of, for how many years in paper 1? कितने साल की हिस्ट्री पढ़ते हैं हम लोग? कितने? 5000 ईयर. लेट अस टॉक अबाउट आईबीसी ओनली. आप स्टोन एज छोड़ दीजिए, ठीक है, स्टोन एज छोड़ भी देते हैं आप, तो कम से कम जो है 3500 साल उधर हो गए, और इधर कितने साल हो गए मिडीवल तक, मतलब 2000 साल. सो ऑलमोस्ट ऑल ऑफ हिस्ट्री ऑफ 5500 years, right? So this much history you have been reading. And when it comes to paper 2, for how many years you have been reading the history of paper 2? कितने साल की पढ़ी? 500 साल भी कैसे हो गए यार? कब से शुरू होता है मॉडर्न? This is what I was telling you, concept. That's very important. I asked this question कि मॉडर्न कब से शुरू होता है? आपने बोला पलासी से शुरू होता है. 1757 की पहले वाली रात को हम मेडिवल में सोए थे और अगले दिन उठे तो हम मॉडर्न में उठे थे. ऐसा थोड़ी ना होता है यार. ऐसा होता है क्या? नहीं ना. It's a transition. right? So it cannot happen in a single day. It cannot happen overnight, over the night, right? So I think never answer this, answer the question in this way. Okay, if I ask you, when do you find the beginning of modernity? You can say 18th century, right? That is a more balanced answer rather than saying ki from Palasi, or somebody saying ki from the death of Aurangzeb. So Aurangzeb जिस दिन मरा अगले दिन से मॉडर्न आ गया, अगले दिन से लिबर्टी है, इक्वालिटी है, फ्रेटर्निटी है, सारे आइडियाज चारों तरफ फैले हुए हैं, हमें लेना है उसमें से कुछ, ऐसा तो नहीं होता है ना, ठीक है? So don't answer in this way. This is what called as concept, right? So in paper 2 we have been reading the history from 18th century to 20th century. This is what we have been reading. So like, let us say for 250 years, or let us say 300 years, right? So these are the history that we have been reading. Because if we'll talk in European context also, so I think with Renaissance, right, though it's not part of your syllabus, but Renaissance is one thing from where we Renaissance and Enlightenment. There are two movements which mark the beginning of modernity in Europe, right? In case of India, it's coming slightly late in India. So this is how it is. So you just compare. So do you really think that the nature of writing the answers would be similar, or nature of or the understanding of paper 1 and paper 2 would be similar? No. It must be different, and this is what I'm trying to suggest you, right? So when it comes to paper 1, of course, there should be a kind of horizontal approach while understanding, vertical approach while understanding paper 1. And when it comes to paper 2, there should be a horizontal approach while understanding paper 2, right? Now, did you get the meaning of this vertical and the horizontal approach? What is this vertical approach? Timeline. Look, if something happened in Vedic period, right, and then we reached into the Mahajanpada period, so if you think that in Mahajanpada period the society or everything got completely changed, is that true? Has everything got changed in the Mahajanpada period? No. There are few things that must have continued, right? And there are few things must have changed. Like if I'll talk about the changes, what are the changes that you can talk about? क्या change है महाजनपदा period में? If we'll compare it with the Vedic period? State formation. Okay, what else? Urbanization. What else? Urbanization, state formation. Any other change that you find? Sorry? Strong military. New religion. Okay, these are three important changes. But does it mean that it changed the society also outrightly? Is the Varna system completely, given up by the society, or still it is being followed? Still it is being followed, right? So in Mahajan, once you are coming from early Vedic period, Vedic period to Mahajanpada period, it does not mean that everything has been given up, right? There are few new things which are new elements which are coming into the society, but at the same time we'll find the continuation of many new things also, right? So what I'm trying to suggest you, that whenever you are reading paper 1 or studying paper 1, you always try to think, like suppose you have studied something here, so you always try to compare with the previous period and the period which is coming to the coming next, right? Because if you are having this approach, in that case you'll be able to understand history in a continuity and change, and that's the key. These are the key words of history, that you always need to understand the history in a continuity and change, because any period that has been covered, so suppose you are studying the polity here, so of course in polity you find the change from here, but once you are studying society, you would not find ample amount of change in terms of society from early Vedic to this period. In the same fashion we can compare with this period also, and I think if you are having this approach, in that case you can develop a better understanding of the subject. And in fact, while writing the answers also, this approach should be followed, right? In paper 1, you must try to compare it with either previous period or the next period, and now it depends what is the nature of the question. There are some questions which are directly asking you to compare, like I hope you have noticed that recently, if you have seen the questions of the past few years, so you might have seen the questions like from 300 BC to 300 CE, discuss the economy. This is how they have been asking the question. There are some questions, they're not asking all the questions in the same fashion, but this kind of questions are very frequently seen these days. What does that mean? It means it's very simply asking you the changes which occurred, right, and the things which continued. Because this, if you haven't understood the history, in this manner, in that case, you would not be able to do justice with such kind of questions. But when it comes to paper 2, so I think it is not important here, because ultimately we have been studying the history of just 200 or 250 years, and that that is why this kind of vertical comparison is not possible, but yes, the horizontal comparison is possible here. Now what kind of horizontal comparison is is important here? Any event that is taking place in a particular place, it may be affected by some other place also. So just now I was just giving you example of American Revolution or American War of Independence, and if you think that it was completely, it did not have any relationship with Britain or Europe, that's not true. Of course, it had certain relationship with Britain also. And in fact, you won't be able to understand the American War of Independence and American War of Independence and the drafting of Constitution without understanding the environment in Britain, because there were several factors which were deciding the things in Britain or in America. And if suppose, let us take any example from India. So suppose you are talking about the social reformation movement. Yes, social reformation movement is very important, but have you ever connected the social reformation movement with the political developments which were going on in India, specifically in the second half of 19th century? Kabhi connect kiya isko? Do you know about any such connection between these two? Because between the social reformation movement and some other political developments which were going on, sorry, I don't think so that they were very utilitarian. Like Arya Samaj may be one example. There are two persons you can discuss about Dayanand Saraswati, and similar kind of things was practiced by one more fellow, Tilak, in political domain, right? He was a person who was totally against the social reformation. He never liked the social reformation movement. Though in his personal life he was highly radical fellow, but when it comes to political domain, he was always opposing such kind of things, right? So the things were interconnected. You just need to try to understand the things with that manner only, right? And that is why you just need to have a holistic approach to understand the things, anything that is happening. And I think the things could be connected with multiple things, and that is how you need to understand at least the second paper. And while writing the answers also, you need to show this temperament while when it comes to when it comes to paper 2, right? And the final part is the presentation, right? So let us talk about this presentation also. So as far as the presentation is concerned, there's another popular question that I have been facing very frequently. Every question, every aspirant, right? They are much confused about two things: introduction and conclusion. Okay. Because they have learnt it from somewhere that every question is having three parts: introduction, body and conclusion. ठीक है, यही होता है ना, कि गलत बोल रहा हूँ मैं? होता है ना, इंट्रोडक्शन, बॉडी एंड कंक्लूजन. ठीक है. सो नाउ लेट अस टॉक अबाउट दैट इंट्रो, बॉडी एंड कंक्लूजन. इंट्रो, okay, fine. When it comes to introduction, right, there are several sciences which teach you about this introduction. There are several people, they have been telling you about you must write the introduction in this way. There should be some idea that in what way you are going to proceed. ठीक है. मैं बोलता हूँ, शक्ति कपूर का एक बहुत फेमस डायलॉग है, नंगा नहाएगा क्या और निचोड़ेगा क्या. ठीक है, वही मुझे याद आता है. ठीक है यार, एक बात बताइए, you need to write somewhere around 20 questions, right? And don't get trapped into this formal systems and all, right? Look, ultimately you need to write 20 questions, and in fact it's very tough to write 20 questions within 3 hours, and that is why you need to be very cautious for these parts also, right? So when it comes to introduction, never try to write an artistic introduction as such. It's not required. You are not getting marks for that artistic introduction, and in fact that's the most problematic area, because whenever you are sitting to write any answer, the most problematic thing is the first line, that how to begin the answer. And in fact it is taking much time that how to start the answer. Don't think a lot for this, right? What is introduction? I simply say this is the filter, right? This is the filter, right? How come this is the filter? Because suppose any question has been asked on, let us say, Buddhism. Okay. If any question has been asked on Buddhism, so what you need to do, like suppose it is asking that Buddhism was a social reformation, right? Or Buddhism, this question has been asked also that Buddhism was a social reformation movement under the umbrella of religion, right? So once you have certain content that you need to write in body part, but before that you have to write something about, of course you need to introduce the subject, right? So you'll be writing one thing in the beginning, the first few lines for not few lines, in fact, I must say 1 or 2 lines for Buddhism. What is Buddhism? Right? Where the person, for whom you have been writing your answer, he should have some clarity, ki, okay, this is what called as Buddhism. Now, what is Buddhism? So, you can say ki Buddhism was a religious movement, right? Buddhism was a religious movement or a socio-religious movement that took place in 6th century BC, started by Gautam Buddha. Very soon, it became very popular, being not only followed by the masses, but patronized by the rulers also. That's it, right? Buddhism was not only concerned to religion, but Buddhism even had much concerns for the society. That's it. These 3 lines are sufficient. So what did I tell you? It's a filter, right? So we started with the broader concept of Buddhism, right? And then you minimize that concept into this social aspect of Buddhism. That's it. So every answer that you have been writing, right? What is the best way? That you just define the broader terms, right? Nothing else. You just define the broader terms and then minimize it to the actual concern of the question, that what is the actual concern of the question. And you don't need to write the answers in more than 2 or 3 lines. Oh, sorry, the introduction in 3 or more than 3 or 4 lines. That's sufficient. That's more than sufficient to write any introduction. And never try to get in this trap that you need to write a very beautiful answer. बहुत खूबसूरत होना चाहिए, ठीक है? उसी खूबसूरती में आधा टाइम निकल गया. खूबसूरत नहीं बनाना है उसको. Because for that khubsurti you are not getting marks. Okay? You are getting marks for this part, right? So this is the most important part. Now the second aspect, how to deal with this body part. That question I again find very regularly, that how to write it in a subjective manner or in objective manner. So mains is a subjective examination, right? And mostly, ideally, or not mostly, ideally, right, you should write the answer in subjective manner. But does the time allow you to write the answers, 20 answers in a very subjective manner? No, you do not have this much time that you are writing the answers in a very subjective manner, because if you have started writing the answers in a very subjective manner, so there are 2 losses, or there are 2 negative aspects of this. The first, you are lacking time to do this, right? And of course, if you have started writing the answers in this way, and then what is happening, you are going to leave some questions, and I think that's not a good idea. If you think that if you have written 17 very good answers and you have left 3 questions, right, and you are in a positive side, that's incorrect. If you have written substandard, not substandard, if you have written average answers, but you have completed the paper, so I think your weightage is more in as far as selection is concerned, right? One of my student, Aparajita, she always used to say one thing: who is going to decide that your answer is good or bad? So it's better to complete the paper. At least this satisfaction would be there that you have completed the paper, you have written some more or less relevant content, and I think that's more than sufficient. And ultimately, they have been looking for the content. They are not looking for certain scholars of literature. They are just looking for the person that if you have studied a subject, right, what kind of idea you do have, or what kind of idea you owe for the subject, right? And that is why you need to be very smart, you need to play very smart when it comes to body part, right? So what is the smarter way of dealing with this, right? As I told you that, okay, I was just dealing about 2 negative aspects. So the first is this, if you're writing in subjective manner, and the second thing that's very important, that ultimately this is also one of the common mistakes that has been done by many students. Okay, fine, somebody is saying you need to write in objective format, and then this idea has been fixed in your minds ki objective matlab now 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 10, and if you have written 10 points, so you found that the answer is very good, right? This is not true. This is not true that you have written 10 points and the answer is good. Maybe a question is having just 3 points. That body is having, or the main concern of the question is having only 3 points or 4 points or 5 points. That may be also sufficient. There is no point of writing anything which is irrelevant to the answer, and that you always need to remember, right? So never ever try to write which is irrelevant. And if sometimes this question is also coming to me that if we do not have content, so how to write the answer? If you do not have content, you cannot write the answer, right? But yes, it is not true that if you have studied history, you must be having some idea, maybe not ample idea, but some idea. So you don't need to extend that idea. You just, whatever the information you do have, right, simply write that. Have you even noticed that there is any word limit has been given except the question number 1 and 5? No, there is no word limit in history. So the answer can be presented in 1000 words also. The answer can be written by you in just 200 words also. The question is that how much relevant answer you are writing. So if you are writing writing a relevant answer, that's more than sufficient. So never ever panic for the word. Like it was a question of 20 marks and you have just written 250 words. That's sufficient here. If you have written something which is irrelevant and the evaluator somehow notice this, that you are simply trying to misguide him, so there would be punishment for that. But of course, if you have concise your information in limited number of words, so there is a reward also. And UPSC has given this in its notification that the concise expression would be always rewarded. So always try to, if you have limited information, write in that way. Okay. The second aspect that was not completed by me, you have been writing answer for what? For getting marks. And that answer is ultimately evaluated by a person, right? So that person is not robot. That person is a human being. And mind you, let me tell you very, frankly, that evaluation process is never easy. It's a pain. I have been conducting this test series for last many years, and in fact, let me tell you, it's a pain. ठीक है, हाथ में दर्द हो जाता है, इरिटेटिंग लगता है, उसमें अलग अलग हैंडराइटिंग सामने आते हैं, ठीक है, हर किसी का लिखने का अलग तरीका है. तो अगर आपको लगता है कि ये काम मेरे लिए अच्छा है, it's not correct. I am doing it for money, right? But do you really think that that person is evaluating your script, he is also doing it for money? You really think so? No, he is not doing it for money. So why to giving this pain to him? And that is why what exactly I am trying to suggest you, that always try to write the answer in such a way which could facilitate, which could ease the work of the person, that is the person who is evaluating the script. You are thinking this question has been asked, I have written the answer, my job is done. No, your job is not done. Your job is done when the person who is evaluating, he finds it very, very simple. He finds all those points that he has been looking for very simply, or the way you have written, if the points are reflecting by its own, right? So his job is then, his job is done. His job is easier basically. So I think never try to write the answer for the sake of writing only. Always write the answers by thinking in one thing, that okay, ultimately this is going to someone, and if he's getting happy, right, and he'll be happier if you're presenting your answer in a very smoother way, right? You have been underlining those important things. You have been making the points in such a way that these are the keywords, and you have just made the points in the of the keywords, and this is how that body, in that body part, the presentation is playing very important role, right? Right? The presentation part is playing very important role, right? Now the question was that, do you need to write in subjective or objective manner? Don't write either in subjective or on objective manner, right? What you do, you just mix both the style. What I normally suggest to the students, you just wrote a paragraph, right? Paragraph doesn't mean of more than of 2 or 3 sentences, right? So suppose you have written something in in 2 lines, right? And then you just write, not in this way, right? In point format. Suppose there are 3 points. You have written one part, right? And then again you find that something should be written in paragraph format, right? And then again 2-3 points, right? So balance your answer in such a way where the sense of the answer is also not dying, and at the same time you are presenting the idea in a very smoother way, right? And at the same time, I told you this, the important keywords always underline. That's very important, right? So that you always need to remember, that this is how you need to write answer. This is the first suggestion for the body part. The second thing, look, I always told you that history is not what we have read in any book. History is whatever we have read, that is his idea, right? So maybe for a single topic there must be many ideas. There must be many ideas. And in fact, if you are reading Upinder Singh, why the Upinder Singh or the book of Upinder Singh has become very popular? Because I think Upinder Singh and Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, this is the beauty they have, that they have discussed the things as per the understanding, right? Or as per the multiple ideas of the historians, rather than they have tried to present their own ideas. What Bipin Chandra has done, how in what way he tried to understand modern India, this is what conveyed to you. But these authors did not do something like that. In fact, if you read the preface of Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, he has written that this is not an intellectual work. This is not an intellectual work, right? It's simply the kind of ideas borrowed from other people, right? And he's saying that I am personally inspired by the subaltern school of history, but I have included the ideas from other schools also, right? So I think this book has become very popular just because of this reason, because it has included many things, right? Now, what is the point of doing telling you all this? Because it's not necessary that in the body part you need to write only one aspect of the answer or the question. Rather, sometimes if it is the 12 words are like critically evaluate, analyze, critically examine, right? So if these kind of 12 words you find at the end of answer, it means that it is asking you to go for another directions. Got the point? But sometimes what you do, that whatever has been given in the statement of the question, you just find that this is what true and this is what you write. This is not correct. Let me give one example. I think this question has been creating panic among students for many years. That question has been asked, I think 2 years back, that most of the IVC sites are found in semi-arid areas. This is how the question has been asked. And now desperately people are adamant to prove one thing, yes, IVC was found in semi-arid areas. Now they have been just looking for the logics. ठीक है, ये हो सकता है, ये हो सकता है, ये हो सकता है. They haven't studied anything as such, but they are giving their logics as if they are the real historians. There is no point of taking this this particular question into that direction. They have asked, yes, most of the IVC sites are falling in the semi-arid areas. This is what they have, or the saline water, right? This is what this this is what has been given in the question. But I think it's quite known to you, right, that IVC was an urbanized period or urbanized civilization, and urbanization always meant surplus. Without surplus, any urbanization cannot take place, because there is a formal system of this urbanization. And in fact, that popular debate, I hope you must be knowing, where they tried to prove, or some of the Western scholars, or basically the imperial authors, they have tried to prove one thing, that ultimately this IVC urbanization was borrowed. The ideas, either ideas or people migrated from Mesopotamia to this region, and that is how IVC came into existence. But what Romila Thapar is saying, she is very simply saying, look, just by seeing someone you can't urbanize yourself. The resources should be there to urbanize yourself. And once you are going for a planned urbanization, that meant more amount of resources. Got my point? So it meant more amount of resources. So I think for IVC, the basic reason for the urbanization of IVC was the surplus. Agricultural surplus, right? And if you're talking about agricultural surplus, so is it possible that the IVC was located in arid or semi-arid areas? It was impossible, right? So I think it's better to prove one thing, okay, these areas are arid these days, but it is not possible that these must be arid even in IVC days. So prove this, this area must be having good rainfall during those years, and just because of that they existed there. Over the period, certain environmental change happened, or that took place because of what now these are known as semi-arid area. But people are desperately trying to prove that these were the logics. They are saying that trade and commerce was the basic reason for the survival of IVC, and just because of that hardly matter that it was falling in arid area or semi-arid area. तो ये तो illogical चीज है, कहाँ पढ़ा आपने तो कहीं ऐसा पढ़ा भी नहीं है, but you have started dominantly proving this, कि this is how it happened. So basically what happened, you don't need to accept the statement, you need to counter argument, you need to give the counter arguments, right? So here, I think in the first will be proving ki what is the location of IVC, right? So you'll be simply writing ki, okay, IVC is found in these areas, right? And these are arid these days because rainfall is not good, and many other things, and some deserts are there, and this is how it is, right? But then you'll be writing ki it is a misconception, because there are several studies that has been done, and they have proved ki IVC had great amount of surplus, and in fact it was depending over the environment of the period, and in fact these are the arguments in favor of this, right? Like Gurdeep Singh has studied about the rainfall pattern, right? And he is writing that around 3500 BC there was an increase in the rainfall pattern, and around 2000 BC again there was a decrease in rainfall pattern, and now he has connected it with IVC, and he is simply saying that with this increase in rainfall pattern, ultimately you do find the IVC is coming into existence, or that evolved, and with this decline ultimately you find that IVC also declined, right? Some other people are saying about giving the seals are always having the wild animals. So if wild animals meant forest, and if any area which is having forest, the rainfall must be good. They have been using the burnt bricks. So how are they burning the bricks? Fuel and wood was the only fuel available to them, it means that they had forest. And in fact, this is supposed to be one reason for the decline of IVC, because just for getting this, burned bricks, they have been continuously cutting the forest, and ultimately that deforestation became the reason because of what? Rainfall decreased here, and that is how it has been explained. So just try to understand the question and believe whatever you have read. Don't believe that they have been asking something completely new, because they are also knowing the limitation of yours, right? And in fact, they have been asking their questions within your limitations rather than they have been asking anything. Because if you'll start asking anything in history, I'm pretty sure that nobody will to score even some 200 150 or 200 also, because there is ample amount of content in history. And there are several researches which have taken place, right? And but this is not what should be included by you. They have been asking very basic questions, but sometimes these questions are based on logics or ideas. And when it is based, so whenever you see the questions, just read twice or thrice the question, underline the keywords of the questions, right? And then just try to develop or frame the answer. Okay, this is the direction in what you need to proceed. But most of you are not doing this. You just see the question, you see IVC urbanization, right? These are the two words you saw, and then you started writing the answers. Don't be in so much hurry. I told you that ideas are getting you marks. The content, right, is getting you marks. The words are never getting you marks. So don't run after the words, because that's not very important. And this is how you need to behave, right? So I hope you got my point. The body part is depending on the nature of the question. There are some questions which are highly factual in nature, right? And if you think once it is facts, like this also you need to know. There are some questions which are factual in nature, right? And I hope everybody is knowing about those facts, so anyone can write the answers. But if you think that if any question is factual and there you are just giving the details of all these facts, suppose they have asked about the the secondary economic activities during the Sultanate period, it's a factual question, right? But it doesn't mean you are just giving all the facts, right? Because multiple details are not required. You just need to write your answer in the multiple directions, right? Okay, as far as secondary economic activities are concerned, right? So we'll be just dividing them into multiple sectors, right? And then for every sector, we'll be giving one example. Okay, this was one craft, this was one, this was the importance of trade and commerce. And whenever the factual questions are also asked, so at least in the introduction, slightly try to deal with the concepts because of what the trade and commerce was existing. Because whenever you do talk about the secondary economic activities, there must be some suitable factors, responsible for the secondary economic activities. Agriculture must be very flourished, right? The surplus creation would be there, and because of that only you find this secondary economic activities started happening. Then you can talk about the role of state in the secondary economic activities. What kind of role was played by state? Was it favoring it? Was it creating some problem for it, right? So this is also one point. So instead of just writing that, you just try to make that background under which it was secondary economic activities were possible, right? And then you can write about certain changes also which were happening during those years. So it doesn't mean that they have asked about the secondary economic activities and you have just given the list of all those practices they had and then your answer is done. That is not very important. Everybody is writing in the same way. So if you need to get 1 or 2 marks more, in that case I think you need to think in a different style to write the answer, right? So as I told you, that body part is always depending up to the nature of question. It may vary, it may be 2 aspects, it may be 3 aspects, right? And there you just introduce the subject, right? This is not the introduction, this is the in body part, right? So after introduction, if you are going into any direction, so you write that direction here in 2 lines and then the supporting arguments with examples, right? And then you are going to another direction, again just 2 lines in about that direction and write the arguments in favor of that, right? And the examples, right? So this is how you need to frame your answers, and that's the best way of framing the answers. That is neither killing the sense of answers, and at the same time in limited time, in limited words, you'll be able to present your answer. So that's also one thing which is very important, right? And coming to the last part, that is conclusion. That's more controversial thing in history, answer writing. Why it's controversial? Because there's no conclusion in history. Got my point? If you think there is any conclusion in history, that's completely incorrect. Let me give you some, I'm just giving a very basic, basic fact. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were supposed to be the largest sites in IVC. Is that notion still prevailing? No, it has been changed. Now Rakhigarhi, Daimabad and Dhaulavira, these are supposed to be the bigger sites as compared to this. And this could change the whole perception of IVC. Initially, as the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were bigger sites, and that is why we always found that the nucleus of this IVC was towards Pakistan. But this idea is changing the whole perception, and they have been claiming, it's not possible, that it's very much likely that these areas were also very important, right? So there's no fixed conclusion as such. And let me tell you, in another way, like suppose nationalism, right? Indian nationalism. So like some people are saying ki Indian nationalism, or let us say Gandhiji, I think he would be the best example. Gandhiji, you think that Gandhi was the person who got independence to India, right? And there is another perception where you are saying, Gandhi was not mainly responsible, the masses were responsible for Indian independence. Now, can you tell me who is wrong and who is right? No, no. Right? You cannot say that he is wrong and she is right. This is how you cannot, conclude the thing. Because I think that Gandhi was the Salman Khan of Indian freedom movement. He got the independence to this country, right? This is how we can perceive it, right? But maybe she is not agree, she doesn't agree with me, and she believes that no, it was not Gandhiji, it was, let us say, Savarkar, who was more responsible for Indian freedom movement. So this is her belief. And she is also a historian, and she is getting certain documents, evidences for this. So we can't, we cannot prove her wrong. We have to accept her because she is a historian, she is not writing the fiction. Right, so this is how you need to understand history. There is no such fixed conclusion in history. It's all about debate, and they all about, these are all about historians. They all are professionally historians, and whatever they have been writing on the basis of evidences, and that is when nothing is wrong, nothing is right. So maybe on certain topics there is a broader consensus among the people, right? Like suppose if you are talking about the Mughal decline, so more or less people are, these days accepting ki Jagirdari crisis or the agrarian crisis, and the agrarian crisis might be responsible factor for the Mughal decline. But it doesn't mean, of course Aurangzeb is also to some extent responsible, but yes, there is a consensus ki Aurangzeb was solely not, responsible for the decline. Maybe his policies were bad, but the main reasons for the decline was this only, right? So I think when consensus is there, so you can conclude the answers in that way, right? But in most of the topics where conclusions are not there, never ever try to end the answers with any conclusion. And the another important thing that I missed to tell you in the introduction, there were many people, because I have been, in this process of evaluation of the script, I have noticed one thing. There are many people, those who have been writing very concluding remarks in their introduction only. Never ever write the concluding remarks in your introduction, because if you're writing the concluding remarks in the introduction, that has cleared the mind of the evaluator ki okay, in this direction you are going to move, and somehow he is not taking much interest. If he is satisfied, in that case okay. If he is not satisfied with your concluding remark in the introduction, in that case you are definitely going to punish you. So that also you need to remember. Right, so that is why be very cautious, at least while writing the introduction, and when it comes to conclusion, never ever try to conclude the things in a way that this is what happened. Like, sometimes you have been asking this question to me, to what extent you believe, right? I am not someone to believe, right? I am not someone to believe. Ultimately, I need to frame my arguments on the basis of historians, right? So they are saying कि नहीं, अभी तो मुझसे पूछा यार, तो मुझे बताना पड़ेगा ना. अरे नहीं बताना यार, उसको पता है, आप हिस्टोरियन नहीं है, आप यूपीएस से लिख रहे हैं, you do not know that what is true and what is false, right? To what extent you believe, it means कि maybe don't even try to show your inclination also towards any idea or any argument. Don't ever try to show. You will be writing कि it's a debatable topic, right? And this is how it has been perceived. So if it is contradictory, never try to conclude it in a way if this is what happened, this is what I believe, and this is true. Never try to present the conclusion in this way, right? So yes, if it is contradictory, you just end the answer in this way only. And the best way of finishing the answer, like there were some of the ideas that can be applied by you even in general studies, that can be applied by you even in in history optional also. Like when you are concluding your answer, that time if you know something, suppose you are writing something about the caste system, about the status of women, about there were many things that can be linked with the present day society. Suppose you are writing about the social reformation movement, so instead of giving a concluding remark, you simply try to raise the present problem, the present problem that we are still facing. Like the if I start talking about the women problem, so you just write there are still so many women problems are being faced by us right now, such as child marriage, right, killing of in the female infanticide, right. So there are several problems that are still being faced. So I think we have to go a long way to recover from this, or to finish or abolish all these practices. This is how you conclude. Or else what you can do, suppose you are very regularly, you have been reading articles on Indus Valley civilization coming in Hindu newspaper. So you just conclude the answer in that way. Ki recently also this topic is in very limelight. The recent findings have been proving something else. Maybe in future there would be some new conclusion would come to us, right? The best are this is how you can finish the conclusion, end the answer, right? So these are few things that you need to remember for these for the answer writing, right? Well, apart from this, there's one more point that I should have discussed earlier. That is about the map section. Okay, that's very problematic. But I think this is an attractive also. This is an attractive topic also, because in map you have been always scoring good. Out of 50, very easily you can score somewhere around 40, 41. Log itna score karte hai, theek hai? So that's possible for you also to score this much. But it's very confusing. Why it's confusing? Because you people are making it confusing, right? It's not, they are not much confused. You are making it confusing. How come? Because all the time you have been raising such questions कि अगर दो sides बहुत पास में है तो क्या करना है? Confusion है, ठीक है? या फिर जो है जो एग्जैक्ट लोकेशन है वहां पे तो कोई साइट ही नहीं मुझे पता है तो फिर उसका क्या करें? सो देयर आर सेवरल क्वेश्चंस व्हिच आर कमिंग, बट लेट मी टेल यू वन थिंग वेरी फ्रैंकली, यूपीएससी इज आल्सो नॉट मेकिंग और फ्रेमिंग देयर ये मैप on perfectly scientific manner, in perfectly scientific manner, and that is why don't bother a lot about the location of the sites. Suppose Rakhi Gadi is here, right, and the site you find somewhere here, matlab it is board, so don't don't mark the exact distance, right? So if it is very closely it's located, you do not know any place nearby this, right, and this is the location that has been given, this is Rakhi Gadi that you do know, still write that this is Rakhi Gadi and write the description. Or else, if you know about two close sites, like there are two Neolithic sites located here and here, right? And then, they have asked about one site, you just write one site, then the another site, write the name of one and write its description. That's it, right? So don't make it much confused, right? Don't make it much confused, because they are very liberal while marking in the map section. And mind you, in one question, site, they have been giving the complete marks also. It's very easy to get just 4 or 5 important details. Now, what are the importance which are, which can be included, which should be included in the detail? Like if you remember the modern day district, though it's tough, but develop this habit of at least remembering this. So maybe out of 17, if you out of 20, if you remember for 10, that is an extra advantage for you. Well, apart from this, if you remember the rivers, right, the name of rivers, right, that's also very important, right? So you write the names of this, right? Then the third thing is the specification of the site. What are the unique things in that site that you need to include? If Neolithic site has been asked, it doesn't mean you are just giving the journalistic detail, right? Don't need to write the journalistic detail, and never write the answer, this particular part in a very subjective manner, right? Simply write 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point, 5 point. That's it, right? So only the keywords, not even the complete sentence, because this is the, this is the area where you can get better marks by investing less amount of time also. So don't ever try to frame the complete answer. Rather, what you need to do, you just simply write, the points, and that too only the keywords, and finish it, right? And at the end, if you feel that still you needed to write something, you just write the journalistic feature. Got the point, right? Well, apart from this, if any site you do not have much information, like it's a Neolithic site, write the journalistic feature. Don't bother a lot, right? Write the journalistic feature. Don't bother a lot. If you're getting half or 1, that's also important. Because in UPSC, I think those who have cleared, they know the meaning of half marks and 1 marks. IAS और IPS के बीच में कितना difference होता है, उतना ही होता है half marks का difference. ठीक है? So that is why don't ignore, don't leave the questions, right? And just do it in this way, right? So that's all from my side, right? Now I'm ready to welcome your questions. Yes, go ahead.
So what will differentiate history's answers in optional from
Okay, fine. Good question, right? Look, of course, this is the discipline that you have studied, right? And here you have studied a proper subject, and that is where the way I have been dealing with, that you have to show certain specialization in answer writing, that you know the subject. Not only you know the subject, you understand the subject. You understand the subject as per the criteria of the discipline, right? So these are the specifications that you need to show while writing the answers. When it comes to GS answer writing, don't try, even though if you are having history as an optional paper, you have many information, never ever try to write the answer in a way that you are having ample amount of information. Very journalistic treatment, layman treatment should be done to the question, rather than dealing it. Like suppose I told you to write the historiography here, Like if there are four different kind of in four different way they have dealt with the question, right? So sorry, dealt with the topic. So you need to write all the four different ways as per the historians. There you don't need to include such kind of thing. Just very simple answer with certain examples. And the last thing that I told you, that if it is possible for you to connect the issue with the present day, right? So that you do, because this is the utility of history, and that is why history is still part of UPSC, because most of the people are saying it has become very pragmatic, but they did not abolish, or they did not remove history from the GS syllabus, and good number of questions are still coming in. So always try to understand the past, the art and culture, and history with respect to the present. Is there any implication of this? If there is any, write it. That's it. Yeah. Complete silence. Yes.
So the inclusion of map and chart or something.
Okay, right. Good point again, right? Look, this is necessary. You must include it, right? But it doesn't mean in every question you need to include it. Wherever the question permits you, right, you include it. And in fact, one thing I told you, that the presentation, right, the presentation, you always need to try how to improve your presentation, right? And that's the reason, because of what I'm suggesting you to include these kind of things. Because suppose I'm just you have been just dealing with a question which is related to the ancient sort of trading routes, right? So instead of describing everything, okay, these were the trading routes, you have just simply made a map, right? And you have shown that these are the trading routes, and now you don't need to describe that. So that saved your time, right? That improved your presentation also, right? But इसका ये मतलब नहीं कि अकबर के ऊपर हम बना रहे तो अकबर की एक इमेज बना दी बगल में, अकबर ऐसा दिखता था, ठीक है? That's it. ठीक है, जहां पे आपको लगता है कि यू कैन सेव योर टाइम, जहां पे आपको लगता है कि आपका प्रेजेंटेशन इससे बेहतर हो जाएगा, वहां पे जाइए. अगर आप कोई टेरिटोरियल एक्सटेंट की बात करते हैं, ठीक है, आपने एक मैप बना दिया और आपने दिखा दिया कि ये टेरिटोरियल एक्सटेंट था उसका, एंड नाउ यू डोंट नीड टू गो कि ओके इट स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम मुल्तान एंड इट वाज गोइंग टू सोनारगांव, इतना लिखना नहीं. दिस वाज द एरिया, लाइक लेबलिंग कर दीजिए वहीं पे, दैट इज बेटर, ठीक है, क्योंकि दीज आर द नेम्स ऑफ दीज प्लेसेस एंड दैट वाज द एक्सटेंट ऑफ मे बी शेरशाह सूरी's period or something like, आई एम जस्ट गिविंग one example to you, right? So this is how you need to include it, because once that fellow what was his name, Ishwar Kandu suggested that you should include this. I have noticed that many people unnecessarily including these kind of things in your answer. So be logical. वो हंसे नहीं आप पे, वो उसको लगे कि अच्छा इसने स्मार्टली काम किया है, वो करना है. या या ओके ओके look, I just told you that you just try to get some general idea. Yeah, some general idea, like if it is very generalist, look, there are certain areas which have never been asked in history, like. But if you are saying no, megalithic twice they have asked in last 30 years, at least they have asked twice the question on megalithic. So some generalistic idea, okay, this was the culture, in this particular part it was found, right? And okay, some generalistic information, this kind of economy they had, this kind of society they had, a rough idea that if you needed to write one answer on megalithic, at least you'll be writing something that can get you around 30% or 40% marks, right? कुछ ऐसे हैं जो बिल्कुल नहीं पूछेंगे, वो पता है, ठीक है. That can, yeah, of course, sufficient. But most of the solutions which are there in the market, they are very substandard, right? So it's better to just take the idea questions from there and collect the material, collect the information from any book which is slightly standard book. Sorry, no, not Wikipedia for history. The Wikipedia or internet can be used for general studies, that is fine, right? Not for history optional. विकीपीडिया भी तो हमारे जैसे लोग ही तो लिखते हैं, तो कौन लिखता है, ठीक है. या
What should be sources for map? And one more thing, there are many sites in Upinder Singh which are given according to the size, the reason. So with that,
look, don't need the first thing that you don't need to cover it from Upinder Singh, right? The second thing, in Upinder Singh itself, the marking is very problematic, right? Because he hasn't followed a scientific system to mark the sites, right? So this is also problematic. And the third thing, you don't need to do anything except collecting the sites which have been asked in previous years, right? You just collect the sites from the previous years, and in fact, frankly, I'm telling you, you don't need to even do this also. Like, you just pick up any standard material that has given the sites as per the eras or as per the phases, like IVC sites. In IVC also they have segregated it like pre and mature and late IVC. So if any material that has done this, right, that you just collect, you start practicing from that. One thing that you can do, that cross check the locations once. Why? Because they have been also marked wrongly, and that is why if you are doing it or practicing it from the Google, in that case you'll be able to recall it for longer period of time, and at the same time you are correcting it also, right? So you can consult our material also, right? That's good. What else? That's it?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, while writing the answer, where we want to collect the sources, like for Chandragupta Maurya mega studies, and where we want to collect the sources, sir, for writing the quality answer.
Matlab, you are just simply saying that while writing the answers, you need to write about some of the sources, right? Okay, suppose that depends ki what content. In fact, whenever you are reading any standard book, I'm not talking about notes, right? So whenever you are reading any standard book in history, they are always referring the sources. So yes, that's one point I missed to discuss with you in paper 1, right? That paper 1, that part is very important. In fact, this is a very important point that I should have discussed, definitely. Like, in paper 1 and paper 2, nature are different. That I have told you, some of the things I have told you. What is the biggest difference? In paper 1, the biggest problem for us is the historicity of the event. Did it really happen or not? Did it really exist in ancient India or not? These kind of questions are very important to us. Do you really have similar kind of questions in paper 2? Did the French Revolution take place? If I'll ask this question, you'll laugh on me. Okay, of course it took place. So what is this? The historicity of the event. So in paper 1, we are having the doubt on the historicity. In paper 2, we are never having the doubts on the historicity. And that is why develop this habit of writing the answers in paper 1 on the basis of sources, right? So you just remember, there are two ways in which you can remember the source, right? Suppose you are dealing with any answer, so maybe certain information we are getting from any specific source. So one way that, okay, this information we have been getting from this source, this information we have been getting from this source, that's one way. But that's a bit problematic for you to write because you can't remember this much. So the best way would be that once you have written the introduction, and then in the second para, you'll be writing about all those sources that you have been using in your answers, right? So like, for suppose the question he has raised, someone is writing on Mauryan Empire. So of course Indica, right? And then Arthashastra, Ashokan inscription, right? And some other Buddhist texts, right? So in the beginning only you mentioned that these are the source material for knowing on Mauryan Empire. That you also need to improve. So in paper 1, you just develop this habit of writing about these. Yes, anything else? Yeah. आर्ट एंड कल्चर तो हमारे आसपास बिखरा हुआ है, जितना है तो यही है, ठीक है. कुतुब मीनार है, हुमायूंस टॉम्ब है, नहीं. Look, this question is again, you have been asking this for general studies or history? For both, right? Okay, as far as history is concerned, so I never find questions from art and culture directly being asked. There are some important things which are asked, such as, okay, they can ask about the, Sultanate architecture or Mughal architecture, the temple architecture, right? So there are some areas which are being asked, right? Specifically, you'll find architecture, right? And architecture and painting, nothing else, right? Look, when it comes to, this portion, like, general studies, right? So there you need to, I think, go one book, that is the, an introduction to Indian art, right? So just a very simple reading that you can read. Apart from this, you can read this NIOS material. So look, you need to cover the things as per their weightage in the examination. So this is very important. That's true, but it's very complicated also. This is also simultaneously true. But for that section, just for sake of one question or two questions, you cannot read the whole book of A.L. Bossom. ठीक है, और वो भी जरूरी नहीं कि उसमें से questions आ रहे हो, उसमें से answers मिल रहे हो, ठीक है, जरूरी नहीं है. So I always keep on suggesting one thing, कि you just cover some basic stuff, basic readings, right, like the NCERT and NIOS material. And apart from that, UPSC questions are mostly logical. So there's something, if there's something which is in limelight due to any reason, in that case you'll find if this is what being asked in UPSC, right. So whenever you find some topic has been covered in newspaper, some topics have been covered in newspaper, so you just make a listing of that. ठीक है, उसका लिस्ट बनाइए और उसका लिस्ट बना के थोड़ा सा उसको थोड़ा सा अलग से प्रिपेयर कर लीजिए. इस बार के क्वेश्चन से बहुत सिंपल थे जनरल स्टडीज में, ठीक है, लेकिन बाकी साल के क्वेश्चंस में कहीं ना कहीं उनका एक साल के करंट से कोई लिंकेजेस जो है उनके होते हैं, ठीक है. तो ऑलवेज ट्राई टू कवर इन दैट वे. So there should be two directions in which we can cover the topics in general studies. That's all, right? Thank you very much.